morning. Good morning. Yes. Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. I welcome you to this first seminar series, our Friday seminar series, and thank you so much for coming. First, we're going to have a presentation from Klara Rosa MaSibanda, and after that, we'll have discussion. We'll have questions from the floor and from people who are online, and then we have discussions afterwards. So first, I'll ask Professor Vengei to introduce Klara, and perhaps the other guests who are here. So over to you, Prof. Vengei.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mbada. In the interest of no one, I think I can't introduce myself. But in the interest of members that are here, I could request Ngubane to introduce himself. We have only Ngubane and Mr. Nyamutswa. I think these are the ones that may probably need introductions. As we start, then I will introduce MaSibanda to speak to us. Ngubane, you can start.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Moni Sesenzana-Konala-Jamangubeni. I'm a young Zulu man. Currently working with the University of Vets and at the University of Oslo in the African Studies Department. I'm a professor there.
Wow.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Mr. Nyamutswa.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Cosmas Nyamutswa. I am an author. I've written Who Built Great Zimbabwe and What For. I'm currently working very hard on the issue of tortures. I've come up with very interesting stuff. And I'm hoping one of the days I'll be able to talk to people and listen about tortures. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I wish to introduce to you Miss Klara. Unfortunately, I told her that her surname is difficult for me. She will have to repeat it when she speaks to us, but I think it would be good that I just refer to her as MaSibanda. And of course, she has got a very long CV, which I cannot be able to exhaust as we start our meeting. I would allow members of the board, of the department, and of the conference to, of course, take a keen interest in her presentation and maybe ask quite a number of questions which would be she will be able to respond to. And I think from those questions you will get more about her. But she is a friend and a colleague. She's an academic. She's an artist. She's more interestingly, I think for us, she's a svikiro. I think you can see also from the attire that she is putting on, it's associated with svikiro, spirit mediums, for those who cannot understand Shona. So, because of that area of expertise of hers, we have invited her to the department so that we could have an interaction with her. Of course, I've raised a number of questions with her and we discussed them, but I think today is the right platform for us to hear it ourselves from her. She is here in Zimbabwe for quite some time now, and she's involved in Mhondoro. She's the director of Mhondoro Productions. Mhondoro Dreams Production. And she's also conducting the Nyamatsatse Festival, which has happened so far 2 times, and she's organizing a 3rd edition of it. And so I think I don't have much to say about her per se. but I would allow her to probably speak to us now. And more interestingly, she prefers to speak in Shona to English. But in the interest of maybe a few others, particularly when we traveled all the way from Oslo, it would be good that you speak in English. And of course, if you use Shona, explain it so that you understand.
I also must say that I'm interested in learning Shona.
Oh, so shall she speak in Shona only?
I would prefer that she does.
Wow, thank you very much. So you are free.
Okay,
Clara.
ndoyedza. But for in the interest of legibility and maybe also some things that ndichiri kudzidza shona yehudzamu, and nasi ndinoda kunyatsotsanangura nyaya yangu, and I think probably for the first time in public with neizwi rangu, because I've written some books about my journey, but you know how it is when you are an author of books, not everyone reads your books. Yes, so Magadi. Tinotenda chaizvo. Ndinotenda chaizvo nekuuya. Ini ndinonzi Klara, ndinobva kuPoland. And ndiri kuZimbabwe, and as Obvious so kindly introduced me, Ndishamwari, and also Ndisawira. So yes, I'm a Ndishikiro. I am a Shikiro. And I thought that probably the best place to start my presentation would be with that. That seems to be the thing that, that maybe is the most controversial. And it raises a number of questions, even in our presentation. It raises the questions of the title of this presentation, which is Chivano and Polish Chivano. What are the connections? It raises the questions of the question that I have been working on for years, which is of interest to me, which is why has the Spirit decided to do this that you see? What is the purpose? Because if there's one thing that, and when I speak about Chivano, I'm going to speak broadly. So when I speak about Chivano, I am talking about what we know as African traditional spirituality, and then also I am also referring to Polish Chivano, because our ancestors in Poland are just as pragmatic as African ancestors. I know them quite well. And so I think here we have to look at the pragmatism of the spiritual systems that we're talking about, and the pragmatism of the spirits themselves. They don't waste time. They don't waste energy. They don't waste. It's us humans who are good at wasting. But the spirits, they're quite practical. So when you look at a story like mine, I would request that you know, find it in your heart to have some compassion for this story, and then maybe instead of asking the question that people often ask, which is this possible, is this impossible, to ask yourself, why would this be the case? What for? What is the purpose? Again, I think that's the more interesting question. So to reiterate, ndiri shikiro. And when I tell people that, very often I get responses, especially Zimbabwe, people, they'll respond, they'll say, it's not possible for you to be a shikiro. And then if they see me in a spiritual space, if they see me in a ceremony or so on, then they'll say, you have a confused spirit. Or then they'll say, let's say the spirit comes or something. Then they'll say, clearly you need a lot of help. I remember when I first came, I think it was in 2018, and there was some Kwaedza article. I don't know, you know how it is when you're an immigrant. Anyway, everybody can make fun of you, which is fine. So there was some Kwaedza article, and there were so many responses to that Kwaedza article about me that were just like, let's not laugh at this woman. She needs serious help. How can we help her? Clearly there's something very wrong. So I want to assure you also that I do not need serious help. I did not come to Zimbabwe. The spirit did not bring me to Zimbabwe in order to, in order to kind of be the last, the last help before I fall apart completely and, ruin myself and my life and all of that kind of thing. So I'm not confused. Also, the spirit that is on me is not there are Chavez spirits that are associated with me. The spirit that is leading my journey is not a Chavez spirit. I want to emphasize that. The other thing is that the spirit that is guiding my journey, that has been bringing me to Zimbabwe for years, this has been years and years of a journey that I will describe today, this is not a spirit of a Polish ancestor. And I have to be very clear about that, because again, when we talk about the similarities between Polish Chivanu or Slavic Chivanu, I prefer it. Poland is quite young, so we are Slavic people. When we look at our ancient history, Slavic Chivanu, I know it well. I do have the normal human obligations towards my Slavic ancestors, which is part of when we talk about Chivanu in general. Why is Chivanu called Chivanu? It's a human thing. It's a thing that all human beings that are born into this dimension have certain responsibilities. Some people have more responsibilities, some people have other responsibilities, but generally speaking, there's a sense of responsibility. I have responsibilities towards my Slavic ancestors, towards my family, towards my place of origin. I know those guys. Those guys are not leading my journey to Zimbabwe. They have allowed it. They have allowed it because they benefit from it. So I hope that I know sometimes I can jump into the deep end from the get-go, but I think we're in the right company for this kind of discussion. So the other thing is that the spirit that is guiding my journey to Zimbabwe is not a Njuzu spirit. I know, again, that's the most common thing when people look at me and they say, oh, yeah, uri Njuzu, and then they're like, yeah, dipe wo mari. So, as much as I absolutely respect all of the Njuzu, and the place that I come from in Poland, Warszawa, our totem is the mermaid, the Njuzu. So I'm very, very proud of also the role that the mermaids have played in the history of the place where I come from. For example, Warszawa, which is, you might know it as Warsaw, but I urge you to use our proper name, which is Warszawa. We are not a place of war. We are Warszawa, which means Wars i Sawa. In our original myth of the capital city of Poland, the story goes that there was a fisherman and there was a mermaid, and they fell in love, and their love birthed the city. The fisherman's name was Wars, the mermaid's name was Sawa. That's why we are called Warszawa. Yeah, Warszawa, yeah. Yes.
It's very easy for a Shona person.
For a Shona person, Polish is very easy. And for a Polish person, Shona is... Which brings me to my last name, which is Wojtkowska. Yes. So I say that because in our history of, for example, during World War II, there were stories about the mermaids actually leaving the waters and fighting the battles alongside the people. Our Njuzu are protectors. And again, I respect them for that, and I respect the Njuzu. And those stories that, again, show us the kind of similarities that I would hope that all of us here, and all of us taking the decolonizing of African spirituality seriously, that we start first and foremost speaking the truth. Speaking the truth, even if Western conceptions of that Western conceptions don't accommodate that reality. So, because that's the truth that is wanting to come out, which is the spiritual reality and the intervention of the spirit into the so-called material world. We all know stories like that. The story of the liberation, independence struggle in Zimbabwe is full of those stories. Who won the war? The Mhondoro won the war. The question of whether they've actually been acknowledged for it is a different question. We can talk about it. But the who won is, again, it's that story that I'm actually quite surprised. I've been at universities in the US. I did my master's degree at Yale University. No one ever said that the Mhondoro won the war. We were all so preoccupied with the human stories. The spirit stories were a matter of faith, a matter of belief, and that's complicated and weird and might get you fired, so let's not talk about it, you know? And that's the part where if I'm in Poland and if I also am talking about the war and talking about our struggle, and if I talk about the Njuzu coming out of the water in order to support their people and their place, then that is something that needs to be said. It's a story that needs to be acknowledged, needs to be talked about, so that as humanity, again, when we talk about purpose, what is the purpose of a spirit calling somebody like me calling me here to Zimbabwe in this way, a way that all of you recognize and maybe just doesn't seem, maybe, you know, again. Then we look at the purpose of what is the spirit trying to do for humanity, for Africa, for Zimbabwe, with Zimbabwe. What is the big picture? You know, so in my own journey, which now I've been on an initiatory path for about 10 years, and the path never ends, of course. That is something that I didn't know how to ask at the beginning of my journey. At the beginning of my journey, I was extremely concerned with myself, as we are. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, I don't know how to do that here. Sorry, there's I have to admit people here somehow. Okay, so I didn't know how to ask those questions. I was very concerned about myself. I had a very classic initiation experience. I got very sick. I got extremely sick. I couldn't move my body. I was in the most horrendous pain that I do not wish upon my very worst enemy in any lifetime. 24 hours a day. It didn't stop when I was sleeping. I could barely sleep. I was, you know, I would go to sleep for a bit, and then I would somehow move my body a bit, and the pain would just wake me up immediately. I was haunted somehow at the same time, because the truth of the initiation process, especially of a shikiro, is that the spirit does not deal with separation of worlds. The spirit behaves in all of the worlds at the same time. That's one of the things that you learn. All of the times and all of the worlds, all of the dimensions. So it wasn't just my body that was sick, it was my reality that was sick, you know? I had no place on earth. I was actually quite sad. And it makes me quite sad when I think about where I was at. I had no home. I had every job that I got, I was thrown out. My brother died very suddenly from drugs. My family also, you know, it was a process of just being thrown out. It's like people couldn't see me. I made people angry, and just by showing up. And I didn't understand how that was or why that was, because truth be told, I'm a trained professional musician, and I always, when I was younger at least, I didn't feel that I was so terribly controversial in any way, shape, or form. So it was a very shocking experience to me. I did seek help. I sought a lot of help. However, nobody could help me. There was a sense constantly of people misunderstanding. So if there was a psychologist, they would try to get me to psychoanalyze myself, which just didn't work. If there was a motivational coach or something, they would try to get me to focus on my goals. If it was a medical doctor, they would try to, mess me about with chemicals and medications that didn't work. It was just a sense of there's nothing here that makes any single sense. And my dreams also, that were waking up, that had me in very strange areas, very strange spaces, where the spirit started to show up, but I didn't recognize the spirit. I didn't know why there were lions in my dreams. I didn't know why there were people speaking Shona. I couldn't understand them, but they were in my dreams and they were talking to me in Shona, and there was a sense that there was a deep familiarity somewhere there. And I was small-minded. I was concerned with myself. But the spirit part of me that knows better, and that is always one step ahead, even when I am trying to behave in a human way, that spirit at that time led me to a very great man, actually, that Malidoma Somé, who some of you know personally, some of you know from also his writing, his book of Water and the Spirit, and the work that he did connecting African traditional spirituality with the West. For those of you who don't know the story, in very short, kind of in a sentence that is relevant here, Malidoma was sent by his ancestors from present-day Burkina Faso, from the Dagara, to the West in order to help people in the West with their ancestors, because the kinds of destructions that are happening in the West in terms of ancestral relations are upsetting the balance of everything. Which goes back to that point of the Chivano is not a religion. Chivano is, it's a reality. It's a reality that has to do with a human being's obligations on earth as a human, the thing of the human being. The Mashikiro is a different issue, who is, who isn't, how the Mashikiro behave in North America, how they behave in Europe, how they behave in Africa. That's a different question. But Chivano, the things of the human being, the thing of being born, living, and dying here, and having to do that in harmony with the other world and in harmony with those who have sent us here and who accompany us through this human journey, that is universal. So Malidoma was, I found his book, or his book found me, rather. It was one of those things. I was in a used bookstore. The book just kind of fell out, hit me on the head, and it looked interesting. So I bought it. I read it. And there was something about reading that book that I said, I have to meet this man. There's something familiar here. And to be honest, my first thought then, when he described his initiation in the village and so on, a magical reality, his homecoming, part of me it was like an obsession that woke up in me. All I wanted to know was if this person is telling the truth. Because if he is telling the truth, then the world is so much different than the world that I have been told about my whole life. And I prefer that different world, because that different world seems healthier. It seems more cohesive. It seems, it gives hope, and it gives light, and it gives love to people, even people like me, which, as I've described, my place in the world at that point was very tenuous, and I'm surprised that I didn't die. So good for me that I didn't. So I did go, then my brother died, because I was, and after my brother died, that was when, and it's unfortunate, actually, that I can be quite stubborn about the wrong things sometimes, because I went to Malidoma at that point as a person who is very, very cognizant of the fact that I have nothing left to lose at all, that everything that was the most important had already been lost. So all of my previous resistance to going to see an African shaman, who does that, spending a lot of money, so on. What is my family going to think? I don't know, and also I don't want to, I was, like I said, concerned with myself. I just wanted a good human life. And when I went to go see Malidoma as this person, again, who had nothing left to lose, what was remarkable about the divination that I received was that it was completely true. It was completely and shockingly true. It lasted about an hour. It was no longer. That hour changed my life forever. After having gone through all the things that I had been going through, all of my confusion, I sat in front of a person who spread all his, cowrie shells, and he used the shells in order to kind of to tune in, to tap in. And what he told me, he just said, "Look, you're in the wrong place. There's a place that is calling you in Africa, and you're supposed to be there. And to be honest, I don't know why you are here. Why are you in this place physically? You should go there." And of course, me being me, I said, "How do I get there? What is this place? Where is it?" I knew exactly where it was, but you know how it is. And he said, "No, it's well, you have to ask your ancestors. I can't tell you where exactly it is. As for getting there, buy a plane ticket, climb onto the plane. The plane will carry you. The plane will land. You will get off the plane. You will be there. It's simple. It's simple." And that's, again, when we look at Chivano, that's the other thing about it. There's paradoxes involved with it all of the time, but it's very simple. It's very pragmatic. There's nothing complicated about it, even if a person is going through complexity, through complex processes, complex initiations. There's a simplicity about it, clarity, and this goes for Chivano. This is universal. The fact that finally somebody actually saw the core of my dilemma. And Malidoma told me that. He said, anything that you try to do in this place where you are at right now, it's not going to work. You're doing all of the right things. You're trying to work, you're trying to do this, you're trying to create that, you're trying to play, you're trying to perform. You're doing all the right things. It's not going to work. If you try to insist, you are going to waste your energy until you die. If you try to renegotiate, he did say that, because, of course, as we know, in Chivano, there is always a possibility. Can we renegotiate? Are there other ways of going about this? He said, for you, you cannot renegotiate. You can try. But he said, your problem is that your calling is so tangled with your life purpose that if you detach from that calling, from that spirit that is calling you, then you might not have enough energy left to live. Again, we're talking about ways in which the spirit operates, ways in which the spirit works. It's not personal. It's not like the ancestor would have killed me because it's so angry. But it's about how are the body and the spirit and the soul and the energy, how are all of these things connected so that a human being can day to day, as we know, the Hondodze Kurarama, like the survival of day-to-day processes and how things actually come about. In Chivano, we know that these things they're not just what we see, they're something else. And that respect, that every human being has a different calling, that's also that sense of, from the outside, if somebody looks at me from the outside, they might say, well, with your qualifications or your background or this or that, you should be able to do this. But the question is not what you should be able to do within the structures of a colonized world, but what is the calling, what is the purpose for which you have actually come to this reality. Again, certain people like myself are more entangled with that than others. So when Malidoma said those things, it wasn't that he said those things. It wasn't an intellectual understanding. It was that he spoke to my spirit. My spirit was shaking the entire time that he was there. It was shaking me. And I left that place knowing that everything that Malidoma had said was just deeply true, and that none of these other ways of trying to understand myself, psychology, academia, I don't know, neo-spirituality, motivational speaking, all these other things, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, all these other things. I've dabbled in everything. I've been everywhere. Not everywhere, but you know what I mean. They did not give me the answer, but Malidoma did. Through his shells, through his culture, through his Chivano. Through himself as a diviner, as a seer, who actually can see the dilemma that I am faced with, and also who had deep respect for the kind of journey that he could see that was ahead of me. And that's also something that I respect with him, because he helped me over the years. It's been a very long journey. Over the years, he has very much supported, and he did support this this process and this journey of being able to. It's not just about coming to Zimbabwe. It wasn't really just about the plane. It was about coming to Zimbabwe and then managing to initiate, to birth my spirit in such a way that I can show up in front of you like this, for example. So that was the. So I think for me, that's also why when I look at the pragmatism, and also when we look at the purpose of the spirit in terms of these larger movements. Of course, there's the question of why this spirit and why has it brought me here. Then there's also the question of what are these. What is the spirit trying to do with human beings right now? Why? How is it behaving? And I say that because very often in my discussions with people here about Chivanu, one thing that I've really struggled with, I've gotten myself into a lot of trouble, I should mention, coming here and then knowing that I have to do certain things, not knowing exactly how, exactly so on. I've definitely encountered the wrong people many times. And there's a sense of people being unwilling to receive my story and my spirit because it doesn't fit into what they think Chivanu is and what they think Chivanu should look like. And that's where I also would like to differentiate, the same way that I differentiate in Poland. I say this exactly the same thing to Polish people. Chivanu is not custom. Let's not confuse spirituality with custom and Chivanu with custom. Custom is the ways in which human beings have needed to organize things of life and things of the spirit in order for us to be able to live a linear existence. Because a linear existence is, it's a challenge for a soul. It's a challenge for all of our spirits, ancestors, pieces, all of the complexity of the universe, for it to be packed into a linear human life that is quite short and that involves these day-to-day processes that are quite awkward, like eating and washing and things like that. It's, there's some aspects that we must not know, and there's some ways in which human beings have to not know, have to constantly be in the dark. That is not the same as the spirit saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and I now want to come and change things around, or I'm giving you a new form of ritual, I'm giving you a new ceremony, I'm giving you a new prayer, I'm giving you a new process. Why? Because we are a long-term project. When I say we, I mean humanity, I mean the earth, I mean all of that. So that long-term project needs to accommodate for the miraculous, which is something that, again, to understand, Chivanu is, we associate it with tradition, but in our association of Chivanu with tradition, we've shut the door on the spirit coming in and doing things that are quite surprising and that shock us in some way, that remind us that the spirit is alive. It's not a dead thing, And perhaps it is true that it is certain forms of monotheistic religions that have encouraged this. As a person who was raised Polish Catholic, all again involved with our independence movements. For those who know the story, it doesn't matter whether you believe or you don't. Most Polish people are Catholic. That's changing now, but it had to do with the church supporting our independence processes, and that being the space where our political movements were able to be born. So because of that, there's a sense of, when I was younger and I was in church, there was the prophets, they were in ancient times, right? The spirit moved in ancient times. That's when it did its miracles. Jesus was when he was 2,000 years ago, and since that time, really, all of us now, we live in a reality where the miracles are in the past. And my experience of Chivanu, one reason why I'm also very grateful to have studied with Malidoma for as long as I did, is that Malidoma was very clear that Chivanu is also a form of working with the invisible world, a form of engaging in spiritual technologies that by our standards they generate miracles. And they do that not because we adhere to custom, but because we know how to work with spiritual and energetic laws in such a way also, obviously, hopefully the more respectful ways. We all know when bad magic is done, nobody's happy at the end of the day. So it's that thing of trying to turn that story even of bad magic, of witchcraft around, and just saying we're talking about deep knowledge, also of how the spirit behaves and what we can do with the spirit. How can we do that again to uplift everyone, to uplift all of humanity, and also to decolonize and respect again all of us where we come from. Whether it's as human beings or whether it's our recent ancestry or it's our ancient ancestry. So there's that sense of, I'm trying to see if there's anything I'm missing here. Of allowing the spirit to do surprising things, which is something, of allowing us to break rules that we thought were rules. Maybe they were not rules. Maybe they were customs. Just want to say a few more things, and then we can open the floor to questions. Relevance. Yeah, that's often a question that I'm asked. Again, it's quite strange. I know it has to do with how we are raised, maybe, and places that we are raised. But when people look at me and they say, these things are not relevant to you, these things are not, they're not part of your life. They don't apply to you, just based on, race, the construct of race, which, if we take that out of the equation and we actually respect Chivanu as a thing of the human being, then we start to see that it's not, it has nothing to do with this construct called race. Neither does it have to do with this construct called gender or anything like that. It's how are we meaning-making creatures, and how do we stay close to life, So in Poland, we also have our ancestral biras. We have a very important bira every year, and I find it to be quite interesting that our annual kind of societal communal bira for our ancestors, which involves an all-night ceremony, and it involves masks. Our ancestors, when they come on that night, they come masked. That bira happens on the same day, according to the lunar calendar, as the reopening of the matare after the end of Mbudzi. And that somehow it's exactly that same night, because we also operate in our Chivanu in Poland. It's according to the lunar calendar. In terms of some of the associations, some of the connections. And then you might say, okay, so fine, so Polish people, clearly Chivanu is relevant to them. But that's still too small, you see. We still have to look at the global picture, and we still have to say, it's not just that Chivanu is relevant then to Shona people and to Polish people or to Slavic people. It's that there's some way in which we organize time and we organize our ceremonies, our rituals, that keeps us in a process of death, rebirth, and respecting the purpose and the reason and the way in which people come onto this planet and leave this planet, that is trying to reawaken everywhere. And one thing that I also wanted to say is that there's more of this coming. Whether it's already here, to be honest, I don't know. I don't know any people like myself, but I know that they are coming. And I know that we are in a process right now globally of the ancient spirits and the Mhondoro and the Makombwe. They are not limited to a very small place anymore. They never were, but our realities were different in the past. And there's some way in which they are trying to come, and they're trying to speak a story to us, so that we start taking life seriously again, and that we start respecting life seriously again. There's a lot of investment at this moment from the spiritual world into humanity, because there's something that they desperately need us to remember in order for us to survive. Let's remember, it's a pragmatic thing as much as it is also full of love. So the more space that we can create within ourselves and within us together, the more that we do this project of spiritual decolonization, whether it's individually, together, in groups, societal, communal, continental, global, the more we can start hearing not the voices of ancestors who are telling us foolish stories, and they are there, we all know that, but the ancient ancestors who are actually trying to come personally themselves and trying to say there's something that we need to tell you, and there's something that we need to remind you of, and it is bigger than, who threw a curse at who is sleeping with who, and blah, 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 and whatever, and so on.
You're sleeping with who?
Yes, well. So on that note, I do want to open the floor. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. I don't know, is there anything else?
Are you done? So that we
Okay, I
can
think, yeah. The latecomers.
Yes, so
I was à pera.
thank you so much, Klara. That was interesting and eye-opening. So we'll open the floor to questions. Yes.
Thank you very much. Klara, not in the school new presentation yako. Klara sema nga school new presentation yako. So it's very, very interesting. I don't know whether I should have been the first to speak because there's so much to ask and so much to say, but let me limit it to this. I have a lot of spiritual knowledge which I have acquired. A lot. I came into contact with this spirituality first in 1978, Christian spirituality. But even before that, I was in grade 7 at the time. But even before that, when I was at primary school, I had a friend. My friend's mother was a Nganga. And I would see her, for example, when she was possessed by this healing spirit. And during that time, we would call her Sekuru.
Yes.
And her voice actually would be like a man's voice. So I have come into contact with spirituality, both African spirituality and Christianity, for a very long time, almost all of my life. But as I grow up and become a little bit more sophisticated, let me just zero in on this. I learned that there are 3 types of mediums: clairvoyance, clairsentience, and clairaudience. Clairaudience, they can hear spirits. They don't necessarily see them. Clairsentience, they can feel the spirits and be able to interpret the kind of spirits that are within their vicinity. And then the clairaudience. These are the kinds who the spirit can actually move their spirit and use their organs of speech to be able to talk to the other people, and then you will have to tell them what the spirit has been saying, because they don't even have a clue. If I was going to ask this kind of question, what kind of a medium, do you think these are valid, taxonomies? And if so, if they are valid, to which group would you say you belong? Clairaudience, clairsentience, and clairvoyance.
Okay. Yes. So, the Dambuziko Rangu no the process of taxonomy in general, because I know that it's I think Jakakosha like kuronga zvinhu, and that's a human process. So I think for me the main differentiation is what is the spirit process and what is human beings trying to classify and categorize the thing of the spirit. So what you're saying, it's true. You know, somebody might, for example, self-discover this, or just say, well, this person, they have clairaudience. Clairaudience is a real thing, you know. Or this person, they see the spirit, or this person, they feel the spirit, and so on. That's a useful tool in certain situations and so on. But every spirit can also come, everyone I know who has clairaudience, sometimes they will see the spirit. Sometimes they will feel the spirit, and usually it's kind of like synesthesia. When the spirit comes, it mixes up all of your senses. Because, like I was saying, for example, about me being sick, when people say, you know, when the spirit first came, what did it feel like? And then I say, well, my body, it started with my body, but my whole reality was sick. My whole interaction with the world was sick. And then people say, but the body, so was that an inflammation process? Which part of your body? Which this, which that? And for me, it was total. It was so total. I mean, my whole reality was exploding. So in that sense, I would say all of those categories, I have experienced them and I do experience them, you know. My spirit is tricky, has been tricky all the way through, because it's not a spirit that, it's a very ancient spirit. It's a very, very, very old spirit. And it's been a process for me to learn that, you know, because at the beginning, I also, as a human, when I started initiating and I started talking to, and I started apprenticing and all of that kind of thing, whether it's, you know, with Mashikiro here or with Malidoma or with, you know, there's a medicine man I was apprenticed to in North America, Philip Kashkash. He's a Nez Perce medicine man. So for them, their spirits come singing. Their spirits actually, for their Mashikiro, are called the singers. And, you know, a spirit has arrived because the spirit always comes with a song. So you have, you know, all of these different, I did plant ceremonies in South America, I apprenticed with people there, and again, you had the songs and you had those different things happen. And I've learned over time that it's a mistake, it's a big mistake, but everyone does it, to try to get your spirit to behave like everybody else's spirit. And that, especially in a situation where already the spirit has said, I'm going to come in an unusual way. You know, I'm going to come on you and I'm going to get you through this whole giant journey and process and so on. And there's a purpose to this. So I would say all of those are true. And, you know, what is the purpose of taxiderming the spirit, you know, in some ways? Where does that come from? Yeah. So thank you for the question.
Thank you very much. Let me stop at this. I have so many questions that is smuggled in a presentation.
Yes.
Thank you. In my trade, which does not bring food on the table, I can say so, our key word is wonder. Now, or curiosity. I'm just wondering whether you are Sekuru or Amuya. That's my point of entry. But I'm also wondering whether your understanding of Chiwanu is that it is universal in the sense that everybody understands it the same way, always and everywhere. And I'm also wondering whether my understanding of Chiwanu, which is very local, very Zimbabwean, so to speak, applies to whatever is happening in Poland. Poland, a predominantly Catholic, as you pointed out, Catholic country. I'm also wondering as to what purpose you say you had in your journey, and what destination that you envision in your journey. You talked about linear existence, and what clicked to my mind was cyclical existence. And with that in mind, I'm just wondering, where does it all end?
If it
Thank
ends.
you. If it ends, yes, yes. Thank you so much for those questions. Yes, those are very good, and thank you for the honest questions, because that's really what we are trying to talk about here. So I should emphasize that as much as that the Spirit deals, there are two things that the Spirit deals in. It deals in paradox, and it deals in the miraculous. So the paradoxes here also need to be respected. When I say that Chivano applies globally, I don't mean that the language of Chivano is the same everywhere. It's just like any, Mitauro, right? Can we say that Polish and Shona are the same language? No. Are they both human languages that human beings use to communicate with each other? Yes. Is there a word for love in Shona? Yes. Is there a word for love in Polish? Yes. Is it the same word? No. So that understanding, when we talk about the Varizzi Vendrimbo in Chivano, when we talk about the owners of the land, we are talking about the kind of paradoxical specificity of certain things being done in certain ways in certain places, So in that sense, no. That's why I tell people when they're like, your Polish ancestors, they sent you here. I'm like, no, My Polish ancestors know where to find me in Poland, and they know how to work with the Varizzi Vendrimboku Poland. And there are things that are done in Poland, in places that I need to go to, things that, again, we know that the Chivano thing, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know that language knows how to describe it. But that is not the same as the things that I need to do for my spirit here, and the ways in which that spirit operates here. The learning process, which it is a journey. How can I put it? One of the things that I've learned, because I think the process of initiating, and the process of initiating with certain kinds of spirits, comes with a very steep learning of what we call wisdom in the English language. Which I love that word, actually. I love wisdom because it's useless. It won't, it won't feed you. It won't give you anything. To me, our relationship to wisdom these days is precisely the problem of humanity. That we don't know what to do with wisdom anymore. We don't know how to respect it. We don't know how to apply it. But we do recognize it. It's like we have an intuition for it. And I say that because when I deeply respect the fact that when I first started my journey, I had certain questions. And I was obsessive about those questions. I was obsessed, absolutely. I wanted to know exactly, okay, so what is the end point of this story? And am I going to be okay? Am I going to be healthy? Am I going to have, love, money, and all the kind of things that I wanted, for example? Am I going to that place? And then the Spirit never told me, never said anything about love, money, and all the other things. But it's like layers of that question were stripped off until the question itself changed. Until I realized that then the question became, okay, so who is this spirit? What is this process that I'm on? At the time, before I actually managed to get on the plane and come to Zimbabwe, as I was saying that Malidoma said, it took some time. It took initiation processes. It took being in ceremonial spaces with a lot of people who confused me a lot because they didn't recognize the very specifically African Chivanu process that I was in. They thought that I should be in a neo-spiritual process where you manifest anything you want and, it's all love and light and whatever. And what I was experiencing was so different that they didn't know how to relate to that. So when I started asking those questions, why is it different for me? Why does it seem to be so different? Then when I came to Zimbabwe, okay, so it's not different. I'm not different. I'm actually having the same experience as people here, but then there are the differences. But why is it that my spirit is actually really not interested in, for example, a lot of people go to Mashikiro and so on because they have problems. It's normal, it's also problems are normal. And they'll go and they just want a solution for the problem. Somebody's sick, can this person get better? I lost my job, can I get another job? My family is hungry, can I feed my family? Fundamental questions, which are very important. But but then my spirit doesn't seem to be interested in the small problems. My spirit seems to be interested in the big problem of why have human beings lost their way? Why are we destroying nature? Why do we think it's so normal? Why do we think it's so normal to go up to a tree and cut it down? What is that spirit? And how do we exorcise it, you know? Why have we become so small-minded? Why have we stopped recognizing that we are all brothers and sisters? It actually should be intuitive. It should be natural. We're all born, we live, we die. We all come from a mother, and we all come from the Great Mother. Why have we forgotten our relationship to the stars? That's what I'm writing about right now. So when my spirit asks me these questions, and I am the one here being like, but I need money today, which I do. I'm selling my book, by the way. But it's reconciling that. So to answer that question, I would say that I've stopped putting a limit on my spirit. I've stopped asking it, what is your destination? I'm allowing it to go one step at a time, and I'm respecting the fact that in 10 years' time, I will look back on this moment and say, my questions now are different. And I'm actually, the spirit has created so much space inside of me for it that I can now be more effective. Yeah, so.
Thank you, MaSibanda. Quite an interesting presentation. From what you have been discussing, would you say that you are still in the incubation process, or you are already practicing? I've noted that you talked about your inception into svikiro, but you also you are also saying you are still learning about how your spirit manifests. Then there's how do you relate with naturalism? I'm not some form of naturalism, or would you? What form of ancestor? You talked about there's a Polish ancestors, then there's also Zimbabwean ancestors. Do these correlate?
Okay, I don't actually know what naturalism is, or naturism, or...
Okay. Maybe simplified, a belief in nature.
Okay.
Yes. Life being influenced by nature, what we see in our day-to-day lives. Like you were talking about the issues to do with saying your spirit does not deal with, to say today I have problems, then you deal with the minor or day-to-day problem, you deal with the bigger problems, like to say why are people cutting down trees? I would classify that maybe to naturalism.
Okay. Well, I don't really, I don't know how to, we are nature, you know, we are nature. Just like if I kill a human, I'm killing myself. If I kill a tree, I'm killing myself. If I kill the earth, I'm killing myself. I mean, this is the only planet that we have. So I don't know that it's useful. It's my opinion, maybe my personal opinion. I don't think it's useful to intellectually be continuing to separate ourselves from nature. It's the connection, rebuilding our connection to everything is really, I believe, the point that we are at. The question that you ask, it's a good one. I think about it differently. What I've seen with my spirit is, I respect the pragmatism of my spirit. So my spirit comes and my spirit tells me what to do. I know how my spirit works. I know how it operates. My spirit is working, and it has been working for a while. It's not, and yet I think everybody who is on this path is always in a process of learning, because we also know that the spirit is constantly putting us through a new learning phase, a new initiation, a new ceremony, a new vision, you know? So my spirit will operate in visions. It tells me what to do. Usually it tells me to do something that my first reaction is I can't do that, you know, whether the first one of, you know, go to Zimbabwe and so on. And then I have to find a way to create and go through the ceremony that is being given. And usually that ceremony, again, it has to do with bigger things. It has to do with reconnection, with remembering, and with, on some sense, being a life-giving force. Because that's another thing that we've forgotten when we look at ceremony and we look at ritual. These are supposed to be life-giving processes, life-giving things. They're not supposed to be technical solely. They're not supposed to be harmful. And without them, human beings start having a lot of problems. Like I look at depression, for example, as a spiritual sickness that is overtaking large parts of the Western world. How many people do I know in Poland alone who don't want to live? First thing, they wake up in the morning, that's the first thing that they feel. I don't even want to get out of bed. It's not even worth it. What is that? Is that not a lack of connection to spirit? Is that not a lack of connection to my own purpose? These things might be, you know, they seem cheap, they seem small words, but they're actually huge global problems, because how would humanity behave if everybody woke up in the morning happy and said, I know why I'm here, and I'm taking pleasure and joy in the things that are around me, and I'm enjoying it. You know, we would do different things as humanity, you know, because then when you ask about my spirit, also my spirit is interested in history. Well, my spirit is historical, but it's it's interested in history. It's interested in our relationship as humanity to history, and this is the part where I very much am. I'm excited for the processes of decolonization that we are undergoing on this continent, and I'm excited for all of your work and what is coming, because there's so much about ancient history that right now has been completely covered up, completely erased, covered up, distorted, destroyed, in order for humanity to actually not remember where it comes from and what capabilities it had in the past. The people who built Great Zimbabwe, for example, you know, I know we have the author of the book here, the book, but I also have, you know, I'm also writing a PhD at the moment on the same subject. I have my views about it, and what I've seen is that when we look at any of the marvelous stone structures built around the world, whether it's the pyramids of Giza, whether it's Great Zimbabwe, whether it's Machu Picchu, whether it's Stonehenge, whether it's the Nazca lines, whether it's the, you know, it's endless amounts. They had a big vision for the orientation and positioning of humanity in relation to the cosmos. And in order to maintain that vision, their whole civilization, a whole group of people had to think that it was worthwhile to put, again, time, energy, effort, resources to build these things that were monuments, living monuments to, I am connected to the stars, I am connected to the earth, the tree is my brother, and so is the human being. And it needs to be in stone, which is the memory of the earth. The bones of the earth are stone. So to have those stories now, we are seeing this. This is a big movement across this continent. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to be here during this time, because people are starting to remember, and they're starting to talk, and they're starting to tell those stories. And that is going to change the whole way in which humanity perceives itself. Because from a cyclical time perspective, we remember that the past is the future. And there is no past without a future. And if we do not remember the truth of our past, then our future is just as hopeless as yesterday, as the yesterday that we are told that is ours. You know, so I don't know. Yes.
Dr. Rosa.
Yeah, just a few questions.
Yes, yes.
One, you coming to Africa, is it Africa continent?
What do you mean?
From the point of view that Africa is the cradle of mankind, is this Africa continent? The second one is, do you have African blood?
Can you take all the questions at once and then you can answer them at once?
Okay, yeah, we can take all the questions at once, then I can, because some people might have similar questions. Yes.
And the last one?
Yes.
Well, it's more or less of a comment. Of course, a number of people have seen white people from the West, but mostly in Zimbabwe, people have been familiar with missionaries, whose job mainly was to preach the gospel, but on the negative side, there was the suppression as much as they could on the spiritual. So perhaps some of the reactions that you could have encountered might have this background.
Might have us.
Yes,
That was a point of order, and I think we've done the right thing to rectify issues in terms of how questions are taken, and I would just like to advise that you try to be concise in terms of your responses so that you can accommodate as many questions as can be.
Yes. Yes.
Right. My comment is on okay. You were saying that you were taught that the miraculous had ceased. Yeah, well, that actually is not the teaching of the Catholic Church. The teaching of the Catholic Church is middle ground between, on the one hand, every Christian is a wonder worker, and on the other hand, miracles never happen. Okay, there is actually a thing called the charismatic movement, which is interested in things like healing, speaking in tongues, prophecy, and also discernment of spirits. And the discernment of spirits, well, it's not just a gift, but there's also brings in like intellect and so on. We're trying to look at to see what comes from the good spirit, what comes from the evil spirit. Yeah, and I think there's St. Ignatius' rules for discerning one and the other. And with that, I would like to sort of voice that, well, one of the things they do is that the good spirit is said to give you a feeling of peace, whereas the bad spirit is kind of, it's marked with disorder, there's something that disturbs, etc. And in this regard, I'm rather nervous it's the historical biography, because the things that you experience seem to belong to what belongs to the evil spirit.
Well, I mean, also my C.S. Lewis said that the two eras, being a materialist or being a magician, the devils don't care which one you are. Either way, they'll so while in Africa we may have avoided a lot of materialism, but I think the danger of being a magician is not something.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Klara. I hope my question is fair, but I understand you're a performer, and I'm just curious how far your performance is implicated in your spirituality. If you know, Boao talks about the image of reality and the reality of the image. In other words, you can get immersed in performance and get carried away to the extent that it also affects the real. And so what could be happening is that the performance is informing the reality and vice versa. But the issue is to what extent is your spirituality implicated in performance?
Yeah. Maybe we should take those ones for the next round, which will start with me.
Okay, so I'm going to just go through these questions quickly. Is Africa calling? Yes. Do I have African blood? Every human being has African blood, so yes. Is my recent Polish family, are there any Africans in my recent Polish ancestry? No, not that I am aware, and I've looked. So there's that. In terms of the miraculous and the comment on the Catholic Church and whether my spirit is an evil spirit. Sorry? No, it's okay. I mean, the thing to understand also is, like I said, I've been on this path for 10 years. There's nothing, I challenge you to surprise me, to ask me a question that I have not heard yet, or a comment that I have not heard yet about, my situation and my journey. I'm always learning, of course, but you grow a thick skin. So because it's a good point, the one that you raise, and one that also initially in my journey, there was a very strong sense of that. A lot of people even said that it wasn't just Christians. It was that sense of, well, if the Spirit comes out of love and if the Spirit loves you, then why are you hurting so bad? Why are you suffering as you are suffering? And that's where people are, when I look at either neo-spirituality or spirituality of, on some level, it's like a layperson spirituality, we think that if it's a good spirit, then I should feel love and peace. If it's a bad spirit, then bad things happen in my life. But as a shikiro, when you are called to a certain path, you are actually asked to look deeper than that. Because a shikiro is a medium, and that means that the spirit is on you, and it is, on some level, it's trying to energetically position itself. It's trying to build a bridge between the invisible and the visible world. It's not easy for the spirits to manifest physically. And in fact, even on this continent, even people like Malidoma, his people, the Dagara people, they have had very profound and deep relationships with spirits who are able to physically manifest, but only when the human beings are able also to create certain spaces for those spirits to be able to come in the flesh, right? So because of that, what I, as a human being, felt that I was being burned alive was my body and my energy layers being prepared for the space inside of me to be accommodated, for that spirit to rest comfortably. Because to give you an example, when I went to doctors and so on, nothing helped, nothing worked. It was a disaster, to be honest. It just made me sicker. But I was looking at a life either of, killing myself early with chemicals that didn't even work, or when I came to Zimbabwe and I went through certain ritual processes, the pain went away immediately. And it was because my body, like the explanation, I don't know, you are the right audience to hear this, because this is, my first book was precisely about this. I was trying to explain to people in the West. I was saying, look, when I was in the West, the doctors were talking about inflammation. They were talking about, genetic diseases that we don't know the source of and all of these things. When I came to Zimbabwe and somebody said, no, there's a spirit sitting on you. All we have to do is we have to straighten out the connection between you and the spirit, and it will be fine. And that is indeed what happened. And from a human being perspective, if we look at spiritual technologies, if I'm just looking at myself as a human being, I prefer to have something that works. We return to the pragmatism of Chivanu. It's pragmatic. You look at what works, I sit before you right now. I am not on any medication. I came here on my own 2 legs. Do you know how many times in my life I have not been able to do that? So it's like the understanding that, within the church, of course, we can have a very long discussion about the Catholic Church. I have a lot of opinions because Poland is not Catholic. It's not Catholic, and It hurts my heart when we talk about it that way. Poland is as Catholic as Zimbabwe is Christian. And please take note of that. Because for us, we are Slavic people. And Slavic means we are people of the praising word. And we come from our forests. And for us, our relationships are with our waters, our forests, and our ancestors. Up until this day, if you go to a Polish village, every Polish village, inside of the house, there is a corner where we feed our ancestors. There's a plate of food for our ancestors. If you go to a Polish village, and you will hear stories about the ones who walk between the villages. They're human beings, but you know them. When they arrive to your house, no matter the weather, their clothes are always dripping in water. And we know that those are the ones who carry the spirits of the rain. And when they come, we respect them. We respect them not because of their human face, but because of the spirit that they carry that brings us rain, that causes things to grow. So when you look closer in Poland, you see that there is a deep Chivanu, and it's a beautiful thing, and I see it in everything. All of my Catholic aunts, who are very Catholic, they all go and they pick plants, and they know when to pick them, when to dry them. They all have dreams. When somebody dies, somebody has a dream, and then they have to tell everybody else their dream. When we have, the Catholics took so many of our rituals, like around the solstice, which was for our Slavic spirituality, our Slavic Chivanu, the solstice was the time of rebirth of light. And it was a time also when the ancestors would be walking around. So to give you an example, in Polish Catholicism, if you are invited to a Polish home for Christmas Eve, we celebrate on Christmas Eve, there will be an empty plate at the table. And they'll tell you that plate is for maybe Jesus, maybe a stranger, maybe an angel who is going to come, somebody who we don't know who appears. It's a traditional symbolic act of feeding the stranger. In our Slavic spirituality, it was feeding the ancestor. It is the Catholics who came and changed it. Does that mean, does that make us Catholic? The first thing that we do on Christmas Eve, when do we start our celebrations? We fast all day, and the celebrations are started when the first light shines in the sky, when the first star shines, indicating, again, our old relationships to the stars. The first thing that we do then is we break bread with each other. We have a special kind of bread, and we bless each other. I break a piece of your bread, and you offer me a blessing, and you break a piece of mine, and so on. These are rituals that were being done in our Slavic spirituality, Now they are decorated with symbols of Jesus and Mary and so on. I have nothing against, Jesus and Mary and whatever. They are real spirits. They are there, To me, Jesus is a powerful Mhondoro, and I really respect his life project. but let's not, confuse one thing with the other. So that would be my response to that. And then the image of reality and the reality of the image. I'm very glad that you brought up that question, because I recommend my book, which is about ceremony theater. And this is my life's work up until this point, I suppose. A lifetime of ceremony theater plays that I wrote that were performed as ceremonies. So the connection of the spiritual with the performance, with the art. And the way that I would answer the question in terms of, have I gotten confused? Have I gotten lost in my own performance? And so on. With all humility, because we're all constantly discovering things. And I tell my ancestors daily, if you have led me wrong, give me a knock. Is that traditionally the artist and the spiritual person, the artist and the shaman are the same, because the artist and the shaman both create worlds. And one of the things that is in my book, that is what my book is about, is that artists have to start behaving a lot more responsibly these days. Because they are actually shaping our reality, and they're doing so in often very negative ways. I mean, what sells? Sex and violence, right? So by creating more sex and violence, in a bad way, I should say, but by creating more violence in the arts, that is spilling over into our reality. And so again, I recommend my book. I'm doing a book launch next week on the 25th. it's not, you know, in terms of me, my calling intervened in my life, again, like I said, years ago, in a way that had nothing to do with any performance. I was not born in Zimbabwe. I was not connected to Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe was not on my radar. I was actually, you know, I was training to be a professional violinist. I am a professional violinist. I'm playing a concert this weekend of mainly classical music. You can come and see me, and I will not be dressed like this, you know. So that intervention into my reality is something different. It's different to say that a human being invents and then the spirit comes, and it's different to say the spirit calls and the human being has to accommodate and surrender. So you know, and to understand the years and years and years of, that's when I say that Chivanu is interested in truth. It's pragmatic truth. What works? What works? You know, what has worked? Why am I able to walk on my own two legs right now? What is that a consequence of? So I don't know if that answers the question, but I do recommend my book.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Klara. I wish you could give me a very simple and straightforward answer from my very simple question. You are saying a Zimbabwean spirit brought you here. Is it possible for us to know from which family this spirit is? And you are all connected also with that. There is this Masibanda. Is it because it is the totem from this spirit? Yet you have said in Poland you are connected to the Njuzu spirit, which in Zimbabwe, the Njuzu totem, is it, or family, something like that, which would be different from Sibanda when it comes to Zimbabwe. Which spirit is this which brought you to Zimbabwe? If we may know probably the totem and the family from which it is coming from.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Klara. My question, I think, would be best to the one that was asked about the performance and so forth. And they also touches on the typologies of these spirits. So I'm wondering how you communicate with your spirit. You seem to know very well what that spirit is saying to you. So I'm wondering how you communicate. From the typologist perspective, the other typology that was mentioned, you don't actually even know what the spirit is saying. You are told by others. And you seem to say you have all manifestations of these kinds of typologies. So if it happens in here that you begin to have this other spirit communicates to the extent that you don't know what it is saying, how will we react to that? When does this spirit manifest to you so that you know what it is saying? That's
All right, please.
Thank you, Klara. I'm happy you said you have a thick skin. So my question is a post-colonial political question. As a white woman, practitioner of African traditional religions or spirituality, which spirituality has been systematically demonized in Zimbabwe, how do you negotiate that identity where the majority of your interlocutors don't agree with the existence and effectiveness of indigenous spirituality, and here you come as a non-Zimbabwean, non-black, non-African practitioner? That is number one. Number two is not a question but an observation. You are very fortunate to be making a presentation in a department that refused to accept Prophet Magandiwa to present. Yes, which to me raises a very interesting question in terms of positionality and politics. So, perhaps let me stop there.
Wow.
Can I book the next round? Because it will be slightly it will be slightly to the point, but a little bit elongated.
Okay, but in terms of our time, we have about 30 minutes left.
I'll be
so
very brief.
okay, all right. So you bring up your question in the next round.
Yes,
Maybe
please.
that will be the last question.
Thank
the
you
last
so much.
round.
I'll make it long.
Yes.
Thank you. Again, I keep wondering.
They wonder.
How urbanized is Holland? I'm resisting the urge to ask the question, how civilized is Holland? The reason why I'm asking that is because what you are describing to us, what you are presenting as the common scenario in Holland, it would be deemed, civil, backward, no other terms that describe lack of progress, lack of modernity, or whatever you use, and therefore not in sync with what is happening with the rest of the world. So I'm just wondering if you respond to that.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. These are some good questions. Yes. In terms of the question about the Zimbabwean spirit, which one, which spirit, and so on, I know you're asking me a very seemingly straightforward question. It is not a straightforward question. Yes, because, and so I would invite you to come to this year's Nyamatsatsi Festival, where you will find out which spirit it is. It is the first week of August 4th through 11th, in Harare and in Masvingo. And I will leave that there for now. Yes, and in terms of the question about the Masibanda and the Njuzu and the totems and kind of the spiritual relations, because this is something that it's a process of understanding our spiritual family, our spirit family. And this is something that we also need to start updating our understanding of different spirits and different forms of spirits. When I first came to Zimbabwe, the Shumbas adopted me. This was very, very, very clear to me. There were certain, of course you're given signs, you're given certain information, certain people show up. There was a very, very clear sense of this is the totem that you are adopting here. This is your, relationship. Of course, there were some specific, specifically, for example, my relationship with Vanjapa, who was the sister of Shumba Neoreka. That was a very deep journey. So, and she came in dreams, and she, we had a thing, and her story is in this book, which I recommend. I'm learning. So the thing to understand is that the question of what kind of relationships do we actually have with spirits? Which ones are we born with? Which ones are the spirits built? The relationship is built. It's like they become our friends. Which ones are adopted? So this is something also that Malidoma spoke about a lot. Which ones are discovered later on? So for example, there's a lot of discovery now. A lot of spiritual people are making about their relationships with star families and and their ancestors that are in the stars. This is not something that they were born with this, but they didn't know it. It's something that comes into cognizance later. And this is something in Chivanu, we know this because we know that very often, especially when a healer is born, you'll start with one spirit. And then you think you're fine, and then there's a problem, and then there's another spirit. It turns out, oh, did you even know that there's a Njuzu spirit, and you've been ignoring this Njuzu spirit the whole time? I haven't been, but they haven't said anything. It's that whole process of what kind of relationship and who are these people. So I do know, I'm very, very aware that over these years, I've been called to relate and build relationships with many, you could call them spirit families, and that it's some of those relationships are clear to me where they come from, like my Polish ancestors who always come in human form. They're people that I recognize, even if I didn't know them personally. They speak to me in a language that I recognize. there's that clarity. Then there are spirits that are disembodied. There are spirits that are plant spirits that I've built relationships with who come in plant form. There are spirits that come in star form. There are spirits that, even when I was apprenticing with Malidoma, there are spirits from relationships that his ancestors had to certain spirits that then I built relationships with those spirits as well because I was apprenticing with him. And then they come to me as well. So it's a process, I suppose, of figuring all that out. When I said Njuzu totem, it's not a totem, it's the totem of our city. So I can show you pictures if you go to Warszawa, even on our city council, everything you see, it's in Polish we call it a herb, and it's our symbol. You know, just like when you go to the UZ, you have the symbol of UZ. Our symbol is the mermaid. And it's everywhere you go. So Zimbabweans are often surprised. I know a lot of Zimbabweans in Poland. Actually, it's interesting. Our largest group of Africans right now in Poland is from Zimbabwe, which gives you a sense also who are the ancestors who are calling Zimbabweans to Poland and what kind of spiritual relationships are being created. What kind of ancient history are we all in the process of remembering? So in that sense, that's what I'm saying. I'm not unique. I'm part of a greater, bigger story, bigger picture. Then Njuzu is a world apart. You know, as we know, you're a human being. You have ancestors. Then Njuzu is not really an ancestor. Then Njuzu is something else. But just like the story of the birth of Warszawa, it came out of the love of a human being and a mermaid, and that is the patronage under all of us that we live in that place. It's, do we call the... For me, to be honest, I make it simple for my Polish people because I teach in Poland and so on. A lot of these things are new and old to my Polish clients, my Polish students. So I make it simple. I use the word ancestor for pretty much everyone and everything to make it simple for them, to try to get people to start feeling in certain ways. Our issue, maybe similarly to Zimbabwe, but our very Polish issue is that we are a very traumatized nation, extremely traumatized. Most Polish people from my generation associate family with trauma. Most Polish people are running away, running away from family, running away from that trauma. There's some horror that we can feel, that when we go to other places. I have a friend, for example, it's a family friend. She's a Polish psychologist, and she works in France, and that's what she said. She said, when I have Polish clients, the stories are just entirely different. French people are lighter. Polish people are carrying the traumas of deep traumas, hundreds and hundreds of years of massacres on our land. Our land is soaked in blood, and it makes me very sad. But we are working on it. So rebuilding those relationships, getting my people to feel again that they are welcome on this earth and that life doesn't have to be sad. It's part of my work. It is. So I guess that was a little bit about Poland. I know that I tend to, but there's nothing linear about life, so as we've determined. Post-colonial political question, how do you negotiate your identity? That's an excellent question. Thank you for asking that question. Yeah. Because it's been a very long process. It's been very hard, to be honest. It's been extremely hard. It's been very hard to not take in the stories of what a Murungu is. It's been very hard. When I first came, of course, you just met with all kinds of rejection all the time. I still am. But, hopefully my skin is thicker. And also, I suppose when I talk about this question, what's important is that it's been a process of learning, because you know this better than I do. I mean, you are black people in this time on this earth, and you face rejection every day, whether it's conscious or subconscious. All the time.
I feel like crying.
Yes, exactly. And how many of those types of rejections are unspeakable. They have no words to put to them. You just feel it. You know it. And these days, everything being virtual, you feel it on a virtual level. You feel it when people interact with your work. You feel it even when I was here at UZ, in the kinds of fear that comes first in students of like, but is this okay? Is this fine? Is this going to be received okay? And I hear, the first thing I hear is, it's because I'm black, it's because I'm Zimbabwean, it's because I know that the first reaction to my work is always going to be according to those things. So I also have really tried hard, as much as my journey has been very difficult because, because of how I look. I feel like it's a process of learning, something that in order to function here and in order to have compassion for exactly what we are dealing with in contemporary Zimbabwe, I need to go through it. So that's, as for Prophet Magandiwa, no comment. No comment. So how urbanized is Poland, and the story that I describe about Poland? Yes, absolutely, it's a good question. Because the truth is also that if another Polish person sits here and tells you about Poland, the story will be different. There's no, just as there's no such thing as, oh, she's Polish, so she knows every Polish person's version of Poland and so on. Absolutely not. However, because my learning and my spiritual initiation processes, and even the ones that have had to do with my Polish ancestors and the types of healing that has had to happen within my family. I also come from a tragic Polish family. It's normal where I come from. Because of that, I've had to go into Polish Chiwanu. I've had to understand it anew. I've had to learn. I've been given details in certain ways, in certain places. And I see it also through my artistic work, through the violin. Because if you look at the way a violin is played in a Polish village or in the mountains, we have mountain people who, by the way, carry trimbos and wear cowrie shells as their traditional dress. Where does that come from? And it's a normal part of their traditional dress. There are many mythologies. Every person who carries a trimbo in this place knows kind of the mythology of the trimbo, this trimbo that can do everything. It helps you jump across rivers. It helps you jump from cliff to cliff. It can, it's a being of tremendous power. So I've had to pick up all of these details in order to also do the necessary things in order for my own ancestors to be okay. I do find it interesting because I think what people don't know about Poland is that one thing, we do share a lot of things with Zimbabwe. One thing that we unfortunately share is a very low national self-esteem. Polish people, we feel very insecure about ourselves. It comes from our history. Until very recently, and I know a lot of Polish people who will be very angry at me for saying this, but it's very true. To this day, Polish people don't really think of Poland as part of Europe. When Polish people leave Poland, they say, I'm going to Europe. I'm going to France, I'm going to Britain, I'm going to Germany. Yeah. The private conversations we have is how Germans treat us up until this day, How there's just a sense that they think they're better than us, and how they can come here and do what they want. How we have to also train ourselves to look professional in the world by throwing out even, the bad words that we have for ourselves is, villager. That's an insult in Poland. If you call somebody a villager, then it's backwards. You'll never make it in the world, and your goal is to make it and have all the flashy things and then, so on. So unfortunately, whether it's the Soviet bloc experience, whether it's the formerly called Second World experience, there's some form of similarity, I find. But again, I'm sure another Polish person would say, how dare you say that about Poland? And we're all entitled to our experience and our opinions. Sure. Yeah. So, yes.
Yeah, you'll be telling the truth, Klara, when you say that. Because when you look at the 1st of September 1939, when Hitler smashed through the Polish border, Cambridge Danzig and all that, it's very traumatizing. But I always find pleasure in what the Polish soldiers did, on Monte Cassino, when they drove off the Germans, using fierce military power, and they've never been forgotten for that. But that is not the point for which but I know that kind of trauma, especially when Hitler and Stalin divided Poland, to themselves, which is very bad. this is also what happened to us in a way, as blacks. Clara, humanity is the same. I pity a white person who looks at black people and think that they're backward. I pity black people who look at white men and think that they're devils. Especially like what I encountered in the US. Of course, because of the experience with the Ku Klux Klan and all that. In my little travels across the globe, I've noticed that wherever you are, you quickly get friends. Whether in Indonesia, whether I go to Poland, within 2 weeks I left people who, if I get sick, they'll be the first people to come there and they'll be Polish. And they'll be my friends. It's the same throughout the world. What I want to say is, I don't know whether you believe in this or not, but I strongly believe in reincarnation. I strongly believe in reincarnation. And I could even make a preposterous claim, that you could have been born in Zimbabwe at some ancient time, 1,000 or 2 years back. So it's not surprising that, that spirit could have been a friend of yours or someone else, and they see that you are here. But the greatest gift you have, which then enables the spirits to draw close to you, is because you are a medium. A medium is a medium. You can be used by spirits. I mean, you are mediating between two worlds, between two dimensions, the spiritual and the material. But again, at the same time, let me quickly say, like what John was saying, I also look at this, I'm Catholic, and I also believe in the mystics, you know, St. Francis of Assisi and what have you, and some who have not been mentioned, and some of whom are our own ancestors, black ancestors, but we didn't have the tradition of, calling this a saint or whatnot. But I believe that, a medium can save, you cannot save two worlds at the same time. I'll just, you haven't heard anything new. The Christian spirituality and the traditional Chivanu, whether it's Polish, whether it's Zulu, whether it's Ndebele, whether it's Tonga, Chivanu, is Chivanu. And someone like me believes that Chivanu, at the moment, he has not evolved to the same level as Christian mysticism or spirituality. That's what I think. That great king whom you said is a great Mhondoro, Christ, Jesus. Is to me I can never call him Mhondoro. But that is contagious. Look, this is me now. I'm just telling you what I think. Mhondoro is a spirit, isn't it? It's a spirit which can manifest through somebody else, isn't it? Or do I understand Mhondoro better? I mean, you know what a Mhondoro is. Is it not a spirit that manifests through a high medium? Yeah. Christ does not manifest through a high medium. But anyway, that is something else. Christ does not, he is on his own. He doesn't need a medium to be. But I also believe in what you're saying, that when spirits manifest, just like you were saying, these spirits, the shaman who trained you, there are special conditions during which spirits, there are laws of materialization and dematerialization. When a spirit wants to manifest, for example, here, they cannot do it. 1, because there's light. 2, because it's not cool enough. 3, because we have not been able to supply the required incense or the tobacco or whatever else. Those laws must be fulfilled before a spirit can manifest, especially because they need a lot of odic energy in order for them to take the material energy and be able to show them to human beings. In this room now, it's full of spirits, but you cannot see them because light passes through them. In order for you to see something, the light must bounce on a solid object and reflect back into your retina so that you can be able to see it. If it passes through, then you cannot see it. But this room is full of spirits. But in order for us to be able to see these spirits, if you wanted, we wait until it is night. We wait until it is dark, especially when it's cold, so that it allows for the condensation of odic power. Then these spirits can show themselves to us. But in most cases, it's not necessary when a medium like you is there, because they can borrow your organs of speech and talk to us. Now, depending whether you're in the clairaudience or clairvoyance, mode, you may not hear a thing of what you are saying, especially when you're in the clairvoyance mode. we will have to tell you what the Spirit was telling us, or what even the Spirit wants you to do after it is gone. So to me, I'm not really surprised by mediums, whether your color doesn't really matter at all. But I believe that over the years, there has been spiritual civilizations over thousands of years. And now we're getting into another period. I think in the New Age, they call it the Aquarian Age, which is of heightened spirituality. But even then, these two, the bifurcation between the good and the bad, the black and the white, that continues for quite some time. Let me stop at that. I could go on and on.
Are there any other questions that I can, before I respond to this comment, that I can? This is the last round of. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that there were once police settlements in Rosa, and perhaps as part of your own experience, did that space come into your vision, and that there's some kind of a space where there was a police settlement.
Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah. Claire, tell me, is your experience with the spiritual or with the spirits a common phenomena in Poland?
Okay. Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay, where do I start? I mean, your comment was really more of a comment.
Sure.
I do feel that, I would disagree, I suppose, because I do feel that one of the things that we, not to everything, but just in, how do I say this? One of our biggest issues, and this is global, this is in Poland as well, is the ways in which Christians have separated themselves out spiritually from every other spiritual story on earth. And I feel that it's a shame. It's quite sad. I don't believe that it was the original project of Jesus and Mary. And I feel that there's something about it, of course, that kind of self-isolation, we could say maybe comes from the initial impulse of also Judaism to self-isolate, and then Islam, same thing, to self-isolate, to put a condition on having a spiritual experience as a human being. The condition being that it can only come in this way, it can only come through this one, there's only one good spirit in the universe. I do know people who have very deep experiences with Jesus or the Christ consciousness.
Yeah.
That doesn't even come as Jesus, the man, but that comes as a certain kind of, again, I would say Mhondoro experience. The Lion of Judah. There's no coincidences on the spiritual path. So because of that, I think I would really urge. Whether it's in Poland, whether it's in Zimbabwe, whether it's anywhere in the world, I would urge for all of us who are praying to start praying for those spiritual divides to melt away and to cease. Because there's no reason for it, I should not judge you that your primary relationship is with Jesus, just as you should not judge the spirit that calls me to do good in the world, because it is a spirit that is not Jesus. We are called to that. You mentioned the Aquarian age. Where does that idea come from? It comes from the stars repositioning themselves now in a certain way that is moving us not just into the Aquarian age, but into the Leo-Aquarian age. We are talking about an astrological axis of certain stars coming again into prominence. And all of us as humanity being asked again spiritually to evolve and to step up. So whether it's, race, whether it's spirituality, whether it's religion, and I say that as a person who Within Poland, the church is creating a lot of division, you know. Again, I have a lot of relatives. I respect a lot of Catholics. I know a lot of Catholics, and they're mystics and so on. They have deep experiences. Why is it okay for a priest to stand in a church and tell the whole congregation who to vote for? Why is it okay for that priest to stand there and tell people that, you know, gay people are going to hell? Why is that okay? Why are we even bothering ourselves with that? Because to be honest, I'm bored. I'm bored of those stories. They're boring. They're not interesting. Don't we have, life is short. Let's do other things, you know? So I would say, you know, let's work on healing that divide. There's nothing natural about the divide between Chivanu and other kinds of spirituality. That would be my first comment. In terms of the Polish settlements in Rusape, yes, I've come across my main contact with the Polish cemeteries. Let's call them what they are, you know. Cemeteries in Africa was actually in Tanzania. I worked in Tanzania for a year in Arusha. There's a very famous Polish cemetery in Arusha, which was part of, unfortunately, what happened was when Stalin joined the Allies, then all of the Polish people who were prisoners, of course, they weren't able to go back to Poland. Poland was occupied, so they were sent to the so-called, you know, colonized territories or the British territories. A lot of people died on the way, and then a lot of people died here. And then there were certain people who went back to Poland later, and then there were certain people who... sorry, could we turn... I don't know, could we turn off the sound? Yeah, sorry, okay. So the... You know, I always look at that story, and I do visit the cemeteries when I can. I don't know how to say it. Like my story, my path has been very complex. It's like 10 paths at once. You know, certainly respecting the Polish cemeteries. I do. Are those the ancestors who called me here? No. Are those the ancestors who benefit from me being here? Yes. You know, it's it's like that. The last question, is your experience common? No, there's nothing common about my experience. As far as I know, if you talk to my friends in Poland, they will tell you that I'm a very strange person. They might tell you that. They will also, I do have some friends in Kraków. One of my friends, we've known each other for years and years and years. And she's, I really love her. She's very direct with me. And she says, you know, you get more normal by the year.
Can you come again, please?
You get more normal by the year.
I see. Okay.
And I tell her, I say, it's not that I'm getting more normal, it's that you are becoming more open to these kinds of things, which is true. You know, that certainly after COVID, I felt that COVID was a global initiatory experience where, in fact, my work and even my first Polish book was published then during COVID, and the reason why it was read like it was and why people respected me as they did at the time was because they were coming into contact with experiences that they were afraid of and that they had no way of dealing with, which is actually the role of the healer, isn't it? To help people through those kinds of processes and traumas. Do people have, on the other hand, I will again point to the paradox, because the reason my experience is not common, and people come to me in Poland precisely because they do have experiences like this and they don't know what to do with those experiences. So I believe that, again, whether it's the Aquarian Leo age, whether it's all of us now, we are waking up in new ways. Old paradigms are falling away, and I'm excited and looking forward to all of your journeys within that as well. So Nocena Chaijo, Mia Bonga, dziękuję bardzo, asante sana. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much, Obvious, for organizing. Thank you for leading this, and I'm excited to be part of this department. So.
Sure, this was not prearranged, but I think as part of our appreciation of gratitude, we'll buy those 3 books.
Really?
Yes, we will.
Maita basa.
We'll say which department is represented.
I could see history and culture,
Yeah.
and art, and what is it?
Creative media.
Creative media.
Creative media and communications.
Yes.
Creative media and communications.
And for all my,
It's $25.
So this is 75.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. And no tender chai.